The mining ship Prosperity floated quietly near the asteroid field in the outer reaches. Captain Daehyun checked the scanners one more time before signaling his crew to begin the day's work. They had been mining here for 3 months now, extracting rare metals that Earth needed for building new ships. The work was hard but honest. Daehyun liked it that way. His second officer called out from the navigation station. "Captain, we have ships approaching. 4 of them. They're big." Daehyun felt his stomach tighten. Out here, far from the protected zones, big ships usually meant trouble. He pulled up the identification scanner and cursed under his breath. Velcrin Empire warships. The Velcrin were known throughout the galaxy as bullies who took what they wanted and crushed anyone who complained. "Open a channel," Daehyun said calmly. "Let's see what they want." The view screen flickered to life. A Velcrin commander stared back at him. The alien had gray skin that looked like stone, 4 arms, and eyes that burned with contempt. Daehyun had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who thought humans were beneath them. "Human vessel," the Velcrin commander said, his voice deep and rough. "This asteroid field now belongs to the Velcrin Empire. You will leave immediately or be destroyed." Daehyun kept his voice steady. "Commander, we filed the proper claims with the Galactic Council 3 months ago. This field is legally ours. We have the documents if you want to see them." The Velcrin commander laughed. It was not a friendly sound. "The Galactic Council? You think papers matter out here? You think your 15 years in space makes you equal to empires that have ruled the stars for thousands of years?" He leaned forward. "I am Commander Tharvek. I have conquered 17 worlds. I do not negotiate with species who barely know how to leave their own planet." Daehyun felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. His crew was watching him. 23 people who trusted him to get them home safely. "Commander Tharvek, we don't want trouble. But we're not leaving. This is our legal claim." Tharvek's expression changed. The contempt turned into something darker. "Then you have chosen death." The channel cut off. Daehyun barely had time to shout a warning before the first energy blast hit the Prosperity. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Daehyun grabbed his seat as another blast tore through the hull. "Shields are down," someone shouted. "Engineering is hit. Medical bay is venting atmosphere." Daehyun knew they had no chance. The Prosperity was a mining ship, not a warship. They had no weapons, minimal shields, and no way to outrun military vessels. He reached for the communication panel with shaking hands. "This is Captain Daehyun of the human vessel Prosperity. We are a civilian mining ship. We have no weapons. We surrender. Please, we have families back home. We surrender." The response was another energy blast that tore the ship in half. On Earth, President Ji-won sat in her office reviewing trade agreements when her secretary entered without knocking. That alone told her something terrible had happened. "Madam President, we have a priority message from the outer reaches. It's classified as urgent." Ji-won took the datapad and read the report. Her hands did not shake, but inside, something cold settled into her bones. The Prosperity. 23 crew members, all dead, murdered by the Velcrin Empire for refusing to abandon a legal mining claim. She read the next part of the report. Commander Tharvek had broadcast the destruction across diplomatic channels. He had sent a message with it. "This is what happens to humans who forget their place." Ji-won set down the datapad and looked out the window at the city below. Seoul had been rebuilt 3 times in human history, each time after a war, each time stronger than before. She thought about Daehyun and his crew, people with families, people who had gone to space believing the galaxy would be fair. "Call an emergency meeting," she said quietly. "I want Admiral Hyejin, Commander Minho, and the entire Security Council in the Situation Room in 1 hour." 57 minutes later, Ji-won entered the Situation Room. Admiral Hyejin was already there, studying a tactical display of Velcrin positions. Commander Minho stood in the corner, his face expressionless as always. The rest of the council sat around the long table, their faces grave. "You've all read the report," Ji-won said without preamble. The Velcrin Empire has murdered 23 of our citizens. They did it openly, proudly. They broadcast it as a warning to us. She paused. I want options. The foreign minister spoke first. Madam President, we should take this to the Galactic Council. This is a clear violation of... The Council will do nothing. Admiral Hyejin interrupted. Her voice was sharp. I've been studying the Velcrin for years. They've done this to 14 other species. The Council always offers sympathy and does nothing. The Velcrin are too powerful, too important to the galactic economy. Commander Minho finally spoke. Then we handle it ourselves. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what Minho meant. He ran Earth's Special Operations Command, the people who did the jobs that officially never happened. The foreign minister looked horrified. You're suggesting war? We've been part of the galactic community for only 15 years. The Velcrin control 47 star systems. They have thousands of ships. We can't possibly... We can, Hyejin said flatly. The question is whether we should. Jiwan had been listening quietly. Now she stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the city. Somewhere down there, 23 families were about to receive the worst news of their lives. Somewhere down there, children were about to learn their parents were never coming home. Before we came to space, Jiwan said slowly, we fought each other for thousands of years. We built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We fought wars that killed millions. We did terrible things to each other. She turned to face the room. Then we met other species, and we thought we could leave all that behind. We thought the galaxy would be different, civilized. She walked back to the table and placed her hands on it, leaning forward. But the galaxy isn't civilized. It just hasn't remembered what war really means. The Velcrin think they're warriors because they conquer species that don't fight back. They think they're strong because they've never faced real resistance. What are you saying, Madam President? The foreign minister asked. Jiwan's expression was calm, but her eyes were hard as steel. I'm saying we're going to give the Velcrin a choice. They can hand over Commander Tharvek to stand trial for murder. Or they can learn why humanity stopped fighting each other. Admiral Hyejin smiled. It was not a kind smile. How long do we give them? 72 hours, Jiwan said. That's more than they gave Daehyun and his crew. The message was sent through official diplomatic channels. President Jiwan addressed the Galactic Council directly, her words broadcast across thousands of worlds. To the Velcrin Empire and to the Galactic Council, the Velcrin Empire has murdered 23 human civilians in violation of galactic law. We demand that Commander Tharvek be surrendered for trial within 72 hours. If this demand is not met, Earth will consider itself at war with the Velcrin Empire. We will take all necessary actions to bring the responsible parties to justice, the message ended. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from hundreds of species looked at each other in disbelief. The Myothai ambassador whispered to his aide, Did the humans just threaten the Velcrin Empire? The Velcrin ambassador laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. Let them try. They'll learn their place soon enough. But some of the older ambassadors, the ones who had studied human history, did not laugh. They had read about Earth's wars. They had seen the weapons humans had built to use against each other. They had learned about human concepts like mutually assured destruction and total war. One elderly ambassador from a peaceful species called the Thelrim spoke quietly to her assistant. Pull every ship we have out of Velcrin space. Do it now. Don't ask questions, just do it. Why? The assistant asked. The ambassador looked at the human president's image frozen on the display. Because I've studied Earth's history. I know what that expression means. That's not anger. That's not revenge. That's calculation. The humans aren't going to war. They're going hunting. On the Velcrin homeworld, Commander Tharvek heard about the human ultimatum and laughed with his officers. 72 hours, he said mockingly. What will they do? File a complaint? Send strongly worded letters? He raised his drinking vessel. To the glory of the Velcrin Empire and the cowardice of inferior species. His officers cheered and drank. None of them noticed that the human embassy on their planet was empty. The staff had left quietly 6 hours ago. None of them saw the human ships moving silently through the dark spaces between stars, converging on positions throughout Velcrin territory. The countdown had begun. In Earth's war room, Commander Minho looked at the tactical displays and spoke into his communicator. "All teams, this is Minho. Rules of engagement are as follows. No civilian targets, no unnecessary casualties, and document everything. The galaxy is watching. We're not monsters. We're professionals. Show them the difference." Admiral Heejin pulled up the Velcrin military positions and began marking targets. "They think we're weak because we're peaceful. They're about to learn that peaceful and harmless are not the same thing." President Jiwon stood at the window, watching the city lights come on as night fell. Somewhere out there, Daehyun's family was grieving. 22 other families were grieving. The galaxy thought this would end with human submission. The galaxy was wrong. The 72-hour countdown ticked forward, and humanity prepared to teach the Velcrin Empire a lesson that would echo across the stars for generations. The 72 hours passed in silence. The Velcrin Empire did not respond to Earth's ultimatum. Commander Tharvek gave interviews to galactic news networks, calling humans amusing in their desperation and children playing at diplomacy. The Galactic Council sent messages to Earth urging restraint and patience. President Jiwon read each message and deleted it without responding. On the 73rd hour, Velcrin Military Station Outpost 7 simply stopped transmitting. The station commander had been filing his daily report when every screen in the command center went dark. Emergency lights kicked in. He reached for the communication panel to call for help, but the panel was dead. Everything was dead. He ran to the window and looked out into space. Human ships surrounded the station, not the clumsy civilian vessels the Velcrin were used to seeing. These were military ships, sleek and black, moving with precision that seemed impossible. The station commander had fought in 30 battles. He had never seen ships move like that. The human ships did not fire. They did not need to. They had already cut every system the station had. Power communications, weapons, life support, all gone. The commander watched helplessly as human soldiers in advanced armor cut through the hull and entered the station. It took them 11 minutes to secure all 17 levels. The Velcrin garrison fought hard, but it was like fighting ghosts. The humans moved through the station corridors with perfect coordination. They knew where every Velcrin soldier was before the Velcrin knew where they were. They used weapons that didn't kill unless necessary. Stun grenades, paralysis fields, precision targeting. When it was over, 2,000 Velcrin military personnel sat in the station's main hangar with their hands bound. Not one human soldier had died. Only 3 were injured. The station commander stared at the human officer standing in front of him. "I am Commander Minho of Earth Special Operations," the human said calmly. "Your station is now under human control. You and your crew are prisoners of war. You will be treated according to galactic conventions. Do you understand?" The station commander nodded slowly. He looked at his soldiers. They were afraid. Veterans who had conquered worlds were afraid of these small humans who had taken an entire military station in less than 15 minutes. Minho gestured to his team. "Take them to the holding areas. Make sure they have food and water, medical attention for anyone who needs it." The Velcrin commander watched in confusion as human soldiers helped wounded Velcrin to their feet and guided them gently toward the holding areas. This was not how conquerors were supposed to act. The news of Outpost 7 spread through the galaxy like fire. The Galactic News Network broadcast footage from the station's security cameras. Species across thousands of worlds watched human soldiers move through the corridors with speed and efficiency that seemed unreal. The footage went viral. Within hours, every species in the galaxy was talking about it. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. The Velcrin ambassador demanded military intervention. "The humans have committed an act of war. They must be stopped." Earth's ambassador, a calm woman named Somin, stood and waited for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, she spoke softly. "We asked you to enforce galactic law. You refused. We asked the Velcrin to answer for murdering our civilians. They laughed. So we asked nicely. You chose violence. Now you'll learn why we stopped fighting each other. You dare threaten this council?" The Velcrin ambassador roared. Somin looked at him with empty eyes. "We're not threatening anyone. We're teaching you the difference between civilization and mercy. You mistook our mercy for weakness. That was your mistake, not ours." She activated a holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Earth's history, wars that had killed millions, weapons that could destroy cities in seconds, armies that had fought for years without surrendering, technologies developed specifically for killing other humans as efficiently as possible. We are pursuit predators, Soman said calmly. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up. We don't forget. For 10,000 years, we fought each other. We learned every possible way to kill, to defend, to survive. Then we stopped. Not because we forgot how, because we chose to. She closed the display. The Velcrin Empire killed 23 of our people. We will not kill 23 of theirs. We will not kill 23,000. We will simply remove the people responsible. If the Velcrin Empire wants to make this harder, we can do this the hard way. Your choice. The chamber was silent. On the Velcrin homeworld, the High Command held an emergency meeting. They had lost contact with Outpost 7. Reports were coming in of human ships appearing throughout Velcrin space. Not invading. Just watching, waiting. They took an entire military station without firing a shot, one general said nervously. Our soldiers didn't even know they were there until it was too late. They're trying to scare us, another general argued. One station means nothing. We control 47 star systems. We have thousands of ships. They have dozens. The mathematics are on our side. Commander Tharvek stood. Then let me take a fleet to Earth. We'll burn their homeworld and end this farce. The High Command agreed. Tharvek would take 50 of their finest warships to Earth, not to negotiate, not to talk, to show humanity what happened when inferior species challenged the Velcrin Empire. Admiral Hyegen watched the Velcrin fleet approaching Earth on her tactical display. 50 ships. It was a significant force. The Velcrin thought they were making a statement. They had no idea they were flying into a trap. Status? She asked her tactical officer. Velcrin fleet will reach Earth orbit in 2 hours. They're not even trying to hide. They're broadcasting their approach on all channels. They want everyone to see this. Good, Hyegen said quietly. Let them come. Has Minho's team finished preparations? Yes, Admiral. All teams are in position. Hyegen thought about her own career. 30 years in Earth's military. She had fought in the water wars in her 20s. The border conflicts in her 30s. She had seen what humans could do to each other when resources were scarce. She had seen cities burn and armies clash. Then humanity had unified and gone to space. And she had hoped those days were behind them. But some lessons once learned could never be unlearned. Send the message to all Earth Defense Force ships, she said. Wait for the Velcrin to get cocky. Wait for them to think they've won. Then show them what we really are. The Velcrin fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Commander Tharvek smiled as he looked at the blue planet in the distance. Such a small, insignificant world. He would make it into a lesson the galaxy would never forget. All ships advance to attack formation, he ordered. Prepare to... His tactical officer interrupted. Commander, I'm reading energy signatures. Multiple contacts. They're coming from behind the moon. Tharvek pulled up the display. His confidence wavered. Human ships were emerging from the moon's shadow. Dozens of them. They had been waiting, hiding in Earth's own backyard. How did we not detect them? Tharvek demanded. His science officer looked pale. They were powered down, running silent. They must have been waiting there for days. Commander, their formation, it's not standard military positioning. I don't recognize it. Tharvek stared at the display. The human ships weren't arranged in neat lines like proper military vessels. They were scattered, seemingly random. But as he watched, he realized it wasn't random at all. They were positioned to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. It was a formation designed not for honor or fair combat, but for maximum efficiency in killing. All ships, defensive formation, Tharvek ordered. Show these humans how real warriors fight. The Velcrin fleet moved into their traditional battle formation. Tight organized, each ship supporting the others. It was a formation that had won 1,000 battles across 1,000 years. Admiral Hyegen watched the Velcrin move into position and allowed herself a small smile. They fight like they're in a parade, all neat and orderly, predictable. She opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute protocol chaos. The human ships moved. Not like a military formation, like a pack of wolves. They didn't engage the Velcrin head-on. They struck from unexpected angles. They used the debris field of old satellites as cover. They fired, then moved before the Velcrin could target them. They didn't fight with honor. They fought to win. Commander Minho's voice came through on Hyejin's private channel. Admiral, my teams are in position. We've hacked their communication network, ready to implement psychological warfare protocols. Do it, Hyejin ordered. Suddenly every screen on every Velcrin ship showed the same image. Earth, but not the peaceful blue planet they could see out their windows. This was Earth at war. Mushroom clouds rising over cities, tanks rolling across battlefields, soldiers fighting in trenches, missiles streaking through the sky. The audio was worse, screams, explosions, the sounds of human warfare at its worst. A voice spoke over the images. Commander Minho's voice, calm and cold. This is what we did to each other. Imagine what we'll do to you. The Velcrin fleet's coordination faltered. Ships broke formation. Some tried to flee. Others fired wildly. The humans exploited every mistake ruthlessly. Tharvek watched his fleet fall apart around him. Ships exploded. Others went dark, their systems hacked and disabled. His tactical officer was shouting numbers. 15 ships destroyed. 23 disabled. 12 trying to retreat. Commander, we need to withdraw. But Tharvek's pride wouldn't let him. All remaining ships rammed the human vessels. We die with honor. His crew looked at him in horror. That was a death sentence. But orders were orders. Before they could comply, something hit Tharvek's flagship. Not a weapon. Something physical. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. The crew rushed to find out what happened. Hull breach! Someone screamed. Deck 7. They're inside the ship. Tharvek grabbed his weapon and ran toward Deck 7. He arrived to find his soldiers unconscious on the floor. Standing among them was Commander Minho and a team of human special operations soldiers. Their armor was black and seamless. Their weapons were aimed with perfect precision. Commander Tharvek, Minho said calmly, you are under arrest for the murder of 23 human civilians. You will stand trial for war crimes. Tharvek roared and charged forward, all forearms reaching for Minho. He was bigger, stronger, had more reach. He had killed enemies in hand-to-hand combat before. Minho moved like water. He sidestepped Tharvek's charge, struck 3 precise points on the Velcrin's body, and Tharvek collapsed, paralyzed but conscious. We've been doing this to each other for millennia, Minho said quietly, looking down at the helpless Velcrin commander. You're amateurs. The Battle of Earth lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 47 Velcrin ships were destroyed or disabled. 3 managed to escape. The human fleet had lost 0 ships. 7 were damaged. 12 humans had died. 423 were wounded. The galaxy watched it all live on the news networks. They watched human ships move with deadly precision. They watched Velcrin military might crumble. They watched Commander Tharvek being led in chains onto a human prison ship. President Jiwan addressed the galaxy from Earth. Commander Tharvek will stand trial for his crimes. The trial will be public. The evidence will be presented fairly. He will have legal representation. We will show the galaxy what justice looks like. In the Galactic Council chambers, the representatives sat in stunned silence. The Myothi ambassador whispered to his aide, I was wrong. They're not hunting. They're teaching. And the lesson is terrifying. The Velcrin ambassador sat alone, his confident expression gone. He finally understood what his empire had done. They hadn't just attacked humanity. They had awakened something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that knew how to wage total war but chose not to, until you gave them no choice. The trial of Commander Tharvek began 3 days after his capture. The Galactic News Network broadcast every moment to thousands of worlds. The courtroom was simple, efficient, and open. No hidden proceedings. No secret evidence. Everything was visible. Tharvek sat in the defendant's chair, still defiant despite his chains. He had been given a lawyer, a human attorney named Bora who specialized in galactic law. She had spent hours explaining his rights to him, making sure he understood the process. Tharvek had laughed at her. Your species is soft, he had told her. You give rights to murderers and enemies. That's why you'll always be weak. Bora had looked at him calmly. We give rights to everyone because we know what happens when we don't. We've made that mistake before. We learned from it. That's the difference between us and you. The prosecution presented their case. Video footage from the Prosperity showing Tharvek ordering the attack. Audio recordings of his communications. Testimony from the 3 Velcrin ships that had escaped Earth, whose captains admitted Tharvek had ordered them to ram human vessels. The evidence was overwhelming, but something else happened during the trial. The prosecution also presented evidence of other Velkrin atrocities. Attacks on 14 other species over the past century, civilian ships destroyed, colonies burned, slaves taken. The Velkrin Empire had been doing this for generations, and the Galactic Council had done nothing. Species across the galaxy watched and felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: anger. The Myothi ambassador stood in the council chambers and spoke for the first time in decades. "We have suffered under Velkrin aggression for 60 years, the Myothi said, his voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "They have stolen our resources, killed our people, and threatened us into silence. We asked the council for help. We were told to be patient, to negotiate, to compromise." He looked around the chamber. The humans didn't negotiate. They didn't compromise. They acted, and now we see what justice looks like. Within a week, 17 species had secretly contacted Earth. They all had the same message: "We will help you." They provided intelligence on Velkrin supply routes, military positions, and communication networks. The Velkrin Empire had made enemies across the galaxy, and now those enemies saw a chance for payback. President Jiwan met with Commander Minho in a secure conference room. "We're receiving intelligence from species across the galaxy. The Velkrin have more enemies than we thought." Minho studied the tactical data on the screen. "They've been bullies for too long. Everyone was too afraid to fight back. We showed them it's possible." He zoomed in on a Velkrin supply depot. "With this intelligence, we can cut their supply lines, starve their military machine without firing a shot." "Do it," Jiwan said. "But Minho, remember the rules. No civilian targets, no unnecessary casualties. We're not trying to destroy the Velkrin people. We're trying to remove their ability to hurt others." "Understood," Minho said. "We'll be surgical, precise, professional." Over the next month, Velkrin military infrastructure began to collapse. Supply depots exploded. Communication networks went dark. Military bases found their computer systems infected with viruses that shut down everything except life support. Velkrin soldiers woke up to find their weapons had been sabotaged during the night. But something else happened too. Commander Minho's teams discovered slave labor camps throughout Velkrin territory, camps where captured aliens were forced to work in terrible conditions. The humans didn't just disable these camps, they liberated them. The first camp liberation was broadcast across the galaxy. Human soldiers entered the camp, disabled the guards with stun weapons, and opened the gates. Thousands of aliens from a dozen different species walked free. The humans provided them with food, medical care, and transport back to their homeworlds. One freed slave, a young member of the Thelrim species, spoke to news cameras with tears in her eyes. "The Velkrin told us no one would help us, that the galaxy had forgotten us. But the humans came." They remembered. In the Velkrin High Command, panic was setting in. They had lost contact with 15 military bases. 3 supply depots had been destroyed. Worse, their own colony worlds were starting to rebel. Velkrin civilians who had been fed propaganda about their empire's glory were now seeing the truth. The trial broadcast showed what their military had done. The liberation footage showed what humanity was doing in response. A young Velkrin officer named Ralvesh watched the broadcasts in his quarters. He had joined the military because he believed in defending his people. But now he saw that his people had been the aggressors all along. Everything he had been taught was a lie. He was not alone. Thousands of Velkrin soldiers were questioning their orders. Some were quietly refusing to fire on human ships. Others were deserting. The Empire was cracking from within. 3 Velkrin colony worlds sent a message to Earth. They wanted to surrender. They were tired of the High Command's brutality. They wanted peace. President Jiwan read the surrender offer and looked at her advisors. "They want protection. If we accept their surrender, we become responsible for them." Admiral Heejin nodded. "It's a risk. The High Command will see it as theft of their territory, but if we refuse, we're abandoning people who want our help." "We're not in the business of abandoning people," Jiwan said firmly. She approved the surrender terms. The 3 colony worlds would become independent, self-governing territories under human protection until they could defend themselves. The galaxy watched in astonishment as human forces arrived at the 3 colonies not as conquerors but as peacekeepers. They helped establish democratic governments, They provided resources for rebuilding. They trained local security forces. And then, to everyone's shock, they began to leave. Conquerors don't leave, the Myothi ambassador said in wonder. They stay. They occupy. They exploit. But the humans left. They left behind aid packages and defense treaties and promises of friendship. They left behind something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. Hope that might could be used for right. In the Velcrin High Command, desperation replaced panic. They were losing the war. Not militarily, though that was going badly. They were losing the hearts and minds of their own people. They were losing the loyalty of their colonies. They were losing their grip on the empire they had built over 1,000 years. We need a decisive action, the Supreme Commander said. Something that will remind the galaxy of our power. Something that will make humanity think twice about continuing this war. One of the generals proposed the unthinkable. We use the planet killer weapon. We target one of humanity's colony worlds. We show them what happens when they challenge us. The room went silent. Planet killer weapons were banned by galactic law. They had been outlawed for 500 years. Using one would make the Velcrin universal criminals. Do we have a choice? Another general asked. We're losing everything. If we don't act now, the empire will crumble. They took a vote. It passed. The target was New Sol, humanity's largest off-world colony. 4 million people lived there. Farmers, miners, families, children. The colony had no military value. It was chosen specifically because destroying it would hurt humanity the most. The Velcrin deployed the weapon in secret. A massive warhead that would ignite the colony's atmosphere and sterilize the entire planet. The fleet moved into position ready to fire, but humanity had learned the hard way to always be watching. Admiral Hyejin received the intelligence at 3 in the morning. She read it once, then immediately called President Jiwan. They're going to destroy New Sol, Hyejin said without preamble. They have a planet killer weapon in position. They'll fire in 16 hours. Jiwan felt ice in her veins. Can we stop them? Not in time. The weapon is already armed. If we attack, they might detonate it immediately. Then we evacuate, Jiwan said. All 4 million people. 16 hours. Can it be done? I don't know, Hyejin admitted. We've never attempted something like this. But we have to try. The evacuation began immediately. Every human ship within 3 star systems diverted to New Sol. Military transports, civilian cargo ships, private yachts, anything that could carry people. The colony governor, a woman named Yunji, coordinated the evacuation with calm efficiency. Families with children first, Yunji ordered. Then elderly and medical cases. Everyone else after. No exceptions. The people of New Sol moved with discipline that impressed even the human military. They had drills for this. Every colony did. But no one had ever thought they'd need to evacuate an entire world in hours. Ships landed and lifted off in constant rotation. The spaceports worked beyond their designed capacity. People carried only what they could hold. Everything else was left behind. Homes, possessions, memories, all abandoned to save lives. Commander Minho's teams worked on the ground, helping coordinate the evacuation and providing security. Minho watched families boarding ships and felt cold anger building in his chest. These were civilians. Children. The Velcrin were willing to murder 4 million innocent people just to make a point. 14 hours into the evacuation, they had moved 3.8 million people. 200,000 remained. The ships were coming as fast as they could, but it wouldn't be enough. Governor Yunji stood in the empty command center and looked at the countdown. 2 hours left. She had done everything possible, but mathematics was cruel. 200,000 people were going to die. Then something unexpected happened. The Myothi sent ships. So did the Thelrim. A dozen other species that humanity had helped. Species that had watched humans fight for justice, sent every available vessel they had to New Sol. We cannot let this happen, the Myothi ambassador said in a broadcast to his people. Humanity stood for us when no one else would. Now we stand for them. Ships arrived from across the galaxy. They weren't military vessels. They were cargo haulers, passenger transports, even luxury cruise ships. Captains from 100 different species worked alongside humans to save people they had never met. 16 hours after the evacuation began, the last transport lifted off from New Sol. 4,043,000 people had been saved. The extra 43,000 were non-humans who had been on the colony as guests and visitors. 1 hour later, the Velcrin fired their planet-killer weapon. The atmosphere of New Sol ignited. The planet's surface burned. Cities that had taken decades to build vanished in minutes, but the cities were empty. The Velcrin had succeeded only in destroying buildings and roads and empty homes. President Ji-won addressed the galaxy from a refugee ship filled with families from New Sol. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. The Velcrin Empire has attempted genocide. They tried to murder 4 million of our people. They failed because species across the galaxy helped us. Species we had helped. Species who understand that civilization means standing together against barbarism. She paused. The Velcrin government has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. They have shown they cannot be trusted with power. They cannot be allowed to threaten anyone ever again. Admiral Hyejin received new orders. The gloves were coming off. Every human ship in the galaxy began converging on one destination. Velcrin Prime, the homeworld, the heart of the Empire. It was time to end this war. The human fleet arrived at Velcrin Prime and did nothing. Admiral Hyejin's ships formed a perfect blockade around the planet. No ships in, no ships out. Communications were jammed. The orbital defense platforms were disabled with precision strikes that killed no one, but left the weapons useless. And then the humans simply waited. Inside the Velcrin High Command, confusion reigned. The Supreme Commander stared at the tactical displays showing human ships surrounding their homeworld. Why aren't they attacking? They have us trapped. They could bombard the planet from orbit. What are they waiting for? His intelligence officer had no answers. Their weapons are powered down. They're just holding position. I don't understand their strategy. What the Velcrin High Command didn't know was that Commander Minho had been very busy for the past 3 days. His teams had infiltrated every communication network on Velcrin Prime. They had accessed government databases, military records, and civilian networks. And now they were going to show the Velcrin people something their government had hidden from them for a very long time. The truth. On the first day of the blockade, every screen on Velcrin Prime showed the same broadcast. Not human propaganda, just evidence. Video footage of Velcrin military attacking civilian ships from 14 different species. Audio recordings of high command meetings where they discussed using planet-killer weapons. Financial records showing how the military elite had grown rich while common Velcrin struggled. Testimony from Velcrin soldiers who had witnessed atrocities and been ordered to keep quiet. The Velcrin people watched in growing horror as they realized their government had been lying to them for generations. They weren't defenders. They were conquerors. They weren't heroes. They were bullies. On the second day, the broadcast showed something else. The trial of Commander Tharvek. The Velcrin people watched as their decorated war hero was exposed as a murderer. They watched as human lawyers presented evidence calmly and fairly. They watched as Tharvek had no defense except, "We're strong and they're weak." On the third day, the broadcast showed the attempted genocide at New Sol. The Velcrin people saw the planet-killer weapon firing. They saw the surface burn, and then they saw something that broke through decades of propaganda. They saw species from across the galaxy helping humans evacuate. They saw Velcrin prisoners being treated with dignity in human detention facilities. They saw liberated slaves thanking human soldiers. They saw the 3 colony worlds that had surrendered to humanity now thriving under self-government. The contrast was devastating. The Velcrin Empire had spread fear and hatred across the galaxy. Humanity had spread cooperation and hope. Riots began in the capital city. Velcrin citizens took to the streets demanding answers from their government. The Supreme Commander ordered soldiers to disperse the crowds, but many soldiers refused. They had seen the broadcast too. They knew the truth now. Ralvesh, the young Velcrian officer who had been questioning his role, made a decision. He contacted other officers who felt the same way. They met in secret and discussed what to do. Finally, Ralvesh did something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. He contacted the humans. Commander Minho received the message in his command center aboard the flagship. A Velcrin military officer wanted to talk. It could be a trap. But Minho was curious. He accepted the communication. Ralvesh appeared on the screen. He looked tired and scared, but determined. "My name is Ralvesh. I'm a sub-commander in the Velcrin military. I want to help you end this war." Minho studied the young officer. "Why?" "Because I've seen what my government has done. I've seen how you treat your prisoners. I've seen how you help those colony worlds. I've seen what real civilization looks like. Ralvesh took a deep breath. I have information about the High Command. I know where they're hiding. I know their emergency evacuation plans. And I know I'm not the only Velcrin who wants this to end. What do you want in return? Minho asked. Nothing, Ralvesh said quietly. I just want this to stop. I want my people to have a chance to be better, to be something other than conquerors and bullies. Minho made a decision. Give me the information. If it's good, we'll use it. If you're betraying us, we'll find you. But if you're sincere, you might just save your planet. Ralvesh provided everything. The locations of High Command bunkers, the codes to access secure facilities, the names of officers who were sympathetic to surrender. It was more than intelligence. It was a blueprint for regime change from within. President Jiwan listened to Minho's report and made a decision that would define the end of the war. We're not here to conquer. We're here to remove a threat. If the Velcrin people want to be free of their government, we'll help them. But they have to do it themselves. The broadcast went out on the 4th day of the blockade. President Jiwan's face appeared on every screen across Velcrin Prime. She spoke in clear, simple language that automatic translators carried to every Velcrin home. People of the Velcrin Empire, I am President Jiwan of Earth. My fleet surrounds your world. We have the power to destroy your cities from orbit. We could kill millions in minutes. We could do to you what your government tried to do to us. She paused. But we won't. We're not here for you. We're here for the people who ordered the murder of our civilians, the people who tried to commit genocide against our colony, the people who have terrorized the galaxy for generations while telling you it was necessary. Your government is the threat, not you. You have a choice. Surrender your high command to face justice and we will leave your world in peace. We will help you rebuild. We will help you join the galactic community as equals instead of conquerors. Or protect your government and we will sit here until you run out of food, water, and hope. The decision is yours. We will wait, the broadcast ended. Across Velcrin Prime, people looked at each other and realized something profound. The humans had the power to destroy them but were offering them a choice. The humans had every reason to seek revenge but were offering them justice instead. The riots intensified. But now they weren't just riots. They were revolution. Velcrin citizens stormed government buildings. Military officers like Ralvesh led their units against the High Command's personal guards. It wasn't a long fight. The guards had been trained to fight external enemies, not their own people. Within 6 hours, the Capitol building was surrounded by Velcrin soldiers who had switched sides. The Supreme Commander and his generals barricaded themselves in the command bunker deep underground. They had enough supplies to last months. They would wait out this rebellion. The people would fall in line eventually. They always did. But Commander Minho's teams had the access codes Ralvesh provided. They cut the bunker's communications, then its life support. When the Supreme Commander realized the air was running out, he had 2 choices: surrender or suffocate. He chose to surrender. Velcrin citizens themselves arrested their own high command. They marched them out of the bunker in chains and delivered them to a human transport. There was no ceremony, no speeches, just defeated leaders facing the consequences of their actions. Admiral Hyojin watched the high command board her ship and felt no triumph. Only sadness that it had come to this. Take them to Earth. They'll stand trial alongside Tharvek. The blockade ended on the 5th day. Human ships began leaving Velcrin space. But before they left, President Jiwan made one more broadcast to the Velcrin people. You've taken the first step toward a better future. Now comes the hard part, building a government that serves its people instead of oppressing others. It won't be easy. We know because we've done it ourselves many times throughout our history. We've overthrown tyrants and built democracies. We've failed and tried again. We've learned that freedom is not a gift. It's a responsibility. We'll help you if you want our help. We'll provide advisors, resources, and protection while you rebuild. But we won't rule you. We won't occupy you. This is your world, your future, your choice. The Velcrin people accepted the offer. A provisional government was formed with Ralvesh as one of its leaders. The young officer who had betrayed his commanders to save his people was now helping to lead them towards something better. The trials began on Earth 3 weeks later. The Supreme Commander and his generals faced charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against galactic law. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched as the once mighty Velcrin leaders stood before human judges and tried to defend their actions. They had no defense. The evidence was overwhelming. Video-audio testimony from thousands of witnesses. The prosecutors, led by Attorney Bora, built an airtight case. The defense lawyers did their best, but there was no way to argue away decades of atrocities. The verdict came after 2 weeks of testimony. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing was controversial. Many species expected executions. The Velcrin had tried to exterminate 4 million humans. Justice demanded death. But President G1 had a different idea. We could execute them. We could give them the death they tried to give us. But that would make us like them. Instead, they will spend the rest of their lives rebuilding what they destroyed. They will work in labor camps on New Sol. They will help restore the colony they tried to burn. And they will live with what they've done. The Supreme Commander was led away in chains, his face blank with shock. He had expected death and been given something worse. A lifetime of facing his crimes while helping his victims rebuild. The Galactic Council held a special session. For the first time in 800 years, they voted to expel a member species. The Velcrin Empire was stripped of its council seat and all its privileges. The vote was unanimous. Then something unexpected happened. The council voted to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Security Council. The species that had been the newest and least respected member of the galactic community was now being recognized as a major power. Ambassador Soman stood before the council and gave a simple speech. We accept this honor, but we will not abuse it. We will use our power to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will use our influence to ensure justice is served. And we will remember that power without restraint is tyranny. The council chamber erupted in applause, not because humanity had won a war, but because they had won it the right way. On Velcrin Prime, Ralvesh stood in his office and looked at the rebuilding efforts throughout his world. Humans had kept their promise. They had provided advisors who taught democratic governance. They had sent engineers to help repair infrastructure. They had offered trade agreements that treated the Velcrin as equals instead of subjects. He thought about Commander Minho, who had accepted his betrayal and trusted him when he had no reason to. He thought about President G1, who had offered mercy when revenge would have been justified. He thought about the human soldiers who had liberated slave camps and treated captured Velcrin with dignity. He picked up his communication device and recorded a message to Earth. President G1, this is Ralvesh. I wanted to thank you, not for winning the war, for showing us what we could be, for giving us a chance to be better. My people have a long way to go, but for the first time in our history, we're moving in the right direction. You taught us that power is not the same as strength. That mercy is not weakness. That civilization is measured not by how you treat your equals, but by how you treat those weaker than you. We will never forget this lesson. The message ended. Ralvesh looked out his window at his world and allowed himself to hope. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the end of the war. On New Sol, reconstruction crews worked around the clock to rebuild what the Velcrin planet killer had destroyed. The burned surface was being cleaned and replanted. New buildings rose where old ones had stood. The colony was coming back to life. Among the workers were 50 Velcrin prisoners, including the former Supreme Commander. They wore simple work clothes, not chains. Human guards supervised them, but the guards were more like teachers than jailers. The Velcrin were learning construction techniques, agricultural methods, and most importantly, humility. Governor Yunji walked through the construction site and stopped to watch the Supreme Commander carrying building materials. The once powerful leader who had ordered the destruction of an entire planet was now helping to rebuild it by hand. He saw her watching and looked away in shame. How is he doing? Yunji asked the guard supervisor. Better than expected, the supervisor replied. He works hard. Doesn't complain. I think the reality of what he did is finally hitting him. Yunji nodded. She had lost her home in the attack. So had everyone on New Sol. But she understood President Jiwan's reasoning for this punishment. Death would have been easier for these criminals. This was harder. This was justice. On Earth, President Jiwan prepared for her final address to the Galactic Council. Her term was ending soon, and a new president would be elected. She wanted to leave with a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Hyejin visited her office before the speech. The admiral was retiring too. 35 years of service was enough. She wanted to spend time with her family while she still could. Do you think we did the right thing? Jiwon asked her old friend. Yejin considered the question carefully. We did what was necessary. We showed the galaxy that humanity can fight when needed, but we also showed them we can be merciful. We proved we're not just another species scrambling for power. We're something different. Something better? Jiwon asked. Something more balanced, Yejin said. We remember our violent past. We don't hide from it. But we also choose not to repeat it unless we have no other choice. That's what makes us different from the Velkrin. They glorified conquest. We glorify peace but remain ready for war. Jiwon nodded slowly. I hope the next generation remembers that balance. In the Earth Defense Academy, the next generation was already learning. Yuna, daughter of the late Captain Daehyun, stood at attention with her graduating class. She wore the uniform of the new Galactic Peacekeeping Force, a joint military organization formed by Earth and 17 other species. The Academy Commandant, a retired officer named Taejin, addressed the graduates. You are the first class of the new era. You've trained not just in combat but in diplomacy, not just in strategy but in ethics. You will be sent to protect species that cannot protect themselves. You will face enemies who don't understand mercy. Your job is to teach them. Yuna thought about her father. He had died because he refused to abandon what was right. She had joined the military to honor his memory. Not for revenge, for protection, so that what happened to him would never happen to anyone else. After the ceremony, she visited the memorial at the academy. 23 names were engraved on a wall of polished stone. Her father's name was at the top. She placed her hand on it and made a silent promise. His death would mean something. She would make sure of it. In the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere had changed completely from 6 months ago. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered for President Jiwon's final address. The Velkrin seat remained empty, a reminder of what happens when power is abused. Jiwon stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. When humanity first joined this council 15 years ago, we were the newest members, the least experienced. Many of you wondered if we belonged here at all. Some of you made jokes about how young we were as a spacefaring species. Some of you thought we would be easy to manipulate or intimidate. She paused. The Velkrin Empire made that mistake. They killed 23 of our civilians and expected us to submit. Instead, they learned a lesson that I hope the galaxy never forgets. We didn't come to space looking for war. We came looking for peace. We came hoping to leave our violent past behind. But our past is part of us. We are the product of 10,000 years of learning how to survive against impossible odds. We learned how to fight. We learned how to kill. We became very, very good at it. Then we learned something harder. We learned when not to fight, when to show mercy, when to build instead of destroy. That's what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, not our strategies, our restraint. We can wage total war if we must, but we would rather wage total peace. We can destroy our enemies, but we would rather help them become our friends. We proved this with the Velkrin. We could have exterminated them. We chose to liberate them instead. Jiwon's voice grew stronger. This is humanity's promise to the galaxy. We will be your friends if you treat us with respect. We will be your allies if you stand for justice. We will be your protectors if you cannot protect yourselves. But if you attack us, if you threaten our people, if you try to destroy what we've built, then you will learn what we're capable of when we have no other choice. The age of underestimating humanity is over. The age of cooperation is beginning. Which age you experience depends on you. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then applause began. Slowly at first, then building until the entire council was standing and clapping. Not out of fear, out of respect. The Myothi ambassador approached Jiwon after the speech. President Jiwon, my people would like to propose a formal alliance with Earth. We will share our manufacturing technology in exchange for military protection. Jiwon smiled. We would be honored. But know this, we won't just protect you. We'll teach you to protect yourselves. True allies don't create dependence. They create strength. Over the next few months, 12 more species approached Earth with similar proposals. Species that had been oppressed by stronger neighbors. Species that had been ignored by the Council. Species that had watched humanity fight for justice and wanted to be part of that movement. Earth accepted them all, but true to Jiwon's word, they didn't create an empire. They created a network of equals. The Alliance of Free Worlds, they called it. Members shared resources, technology, and mutual defense. But each world governed itself. Each species maintained its sovereignty. Commander Minho, now retired, accepted a position as instructor at the academy. He taught a class called The Ethics of Force. On the first day, he told his students something that would become legendary among future officers. People will ask you if we're monsters for what we did to the Velcrin. Here's the truth: we're not monsters. We're humans. We're capable of extraordinary compassion and terrifying violence. The universe needs us to be both. The trick is knowing when to use each. The Velcrin learned that lesson. Pray no one else needs to. One student, a young officer named Junho, raised his hand. Commander, do you think the galaxy fears us? Minho considered the question. Some do. But fear alone doesn't last. What lasts is respect earned through consistency. We told the galaxy what we would do if provoked. We did exactly that. We told the galaxy we would show mercy if possible. We did exactly that. Now they know we mean what we say. That's more powerful than fear. On Velcrin Prime, Ral Vesh had been elected as the first minister of the new Velcrin Federation. It was a democratic government, the first in his species' history. He spent his days meeting with other worlds, rebuilding trust and teaching his people a new way to exist in the galaxy. He made a personal trip to Earth to attend a special ceremony. At the Academy Memorial, a new plaque was being added. It honored not just the 23 humans who had died, but also the 14 other species who had suffered under Velcrin aggression over the centuries. Thousands of names, thousands of victims. Ralvesh stood before the memorial with Yuna, Daehyun's daughter. He had asked to meet her specifically. She had agreed, though it was difficult for her. I cannot undo what my government did to your father, Ralvesh said quietly. I cannot bring him back. But I can promise you that his death meant something. It woke my people up. It showed us what we had become. Because of him, millions of Velcrin children will grow up in a free society instead of a military dictatorship. Yuna looked at the memorial, at her father's name. He believed in doing what was right even when it was hard. I think he would be glad something good came from his death. She turned to Ralvesh. But make sure it wasn't for nothing. Make sure your people stay on this path. I will, Ralvesh promised. We all will. In a quiet office on Earth, intelligence analysts made a discovery that was immediately classified at the highest level. They had been studying other species in the galaxy, trying to understand why humanity seemed to be so effective in combat compared to everyone else. The answer was surprising. Several other species in the galaxy were also descended from apex predators. They also had violent histories. But they had been spacefaring for so long, living in relative peace for so many generations, that they had forgotten how to fight effectively. They had evolved beyond their violent natures. Humanity hadn't. Humanity had gone to space while still remembering what it was like to fight for survival. They were the only species in the galaxy that had recent experience with total war. The report concluded with a sobering observation. Humanity is not the most lethal species in the galaxy because we're inherently more violent. We're the most lethal because we remember. Give any other species a few thousand years of peace and they would forget too. Give humanity a few thousand years of peace and we would remember still. It's our blessing and our curse. Admiral Hyojin read the report in her retirement and smiled sadly. We're not special. We're just newer at this. The galaxy will catch up eventually. Until then, we have a responsibility to use what we know wisely. At the Galactic Council, a young species called the Torvin were facing aggressive expansion from a neighboring empire. They brought their case to the council, but the responses were the usual diplomatic platitudes. The council would monitor the situation. They would encourage negotiation. They would remain hopeful for a peaceful resolution. The Torvin representative looked around the chamber in desperation. Then he saw the human ambassador Somin and made a decision. We formally request Earth's assistance under the Alliance of Free Worlds Protection Treaties. The chamber went silent. Every species knew what that meant. If Earth accepted, they would protect the Torvin. And everyone had seen what happened when Earth protected someone. Somin stood. The Alliance accepts your request. Earth will deploy peacekeeping forces to Torvin space immediately. Any attack on Torvin worlds will be considered an attack on all Alliance members. The aggressive empire backed down within a week. They had no desire to face what the Velcrin had faced. The incident became known as the Torvin Moment. It was the first time humanity had extended protection without firing a single shot. Just the threat of human intervention was enough. That was when the galaxy truly understood what humanity had become. Not conquerors, not tyrants, guardians. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, Daehyun's widow received a message from Governor Eunji. The colony on New Seoul was being rebuilt. The central plaza would be named Daehyun Plaza in honor of her husband. His sacrifice had not been forgotten. She cried as she read the message. Tears of sadness for what she had lost. Tears of pride for what his death had achieved. Her husband had died believing in doing the right thing. Humanity had honored that belief by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that could wage total war but chose total peace whenever possible. President Ji-won's term ended with Earth more respected than ever. The new president, a diplomat named Ki-hyun, took office with a simple pledge. We will continue the path Ji-won started. Peace through strength, justice through action, hope through example. Years later, historians would look back at this period as the turning point for galactic civilization. Before humanity's war with the Velkrin, the galaxy operated on the principle that might makes right. Stronger species dominated weaker ones. The Galactic Council existed but had no real power to enforce justice. After the war, things changed. The example humanity set, showing that power could be used for protection rather than oppression, inspired a movement across the galaxy. Species began standing up to their oppressors. The Council gained real authority. Justice became more than just a word. And at the center of it all was humanity, the species that had come to space hoping for peace but ready for war, the species that had proven you could be both warrior and peacemaker, the species that remembered its violent past but chose a different future. On the 50th anniversary of the war, Yuna, now an admiral herself, stood before a new generation of Academy graduates. She told them about her father, about the prosperity, about the choice humanity had made to fight for justice rather than conquest. My father died because he refused to abandon what was right, she told them. Humanity fought because we refused to let his death be meaningless. We won because we were better prepared for war than anyone expected. But we truly succeeded because we were also prepared for peace. That's your legacy. That's your responsibility. You are the guardians of a galaxy that finally understands civilization. Doesn't mean weakness. It means knowing when to fight and when to forgive. When to show strength and when to show mercy. The galaxy learned to respect humanity not because we're the most lethal species, because we are when we need to be, but because we choose not to be unless we have no other choice. She looked out at the young faces before her, human, Velkrin, Myothi, Torvin, and a dozen other species, all training together as peacekeepers. Go out there and prove that the age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun, and if anyone tries to drag us back to the old ways, remind them what happens when you declare war on the most lethal species in the galaxy. Remind them that we will always prefer peace, but we will never forget how to fight. The graduates stood as one and saluted. They were the future. And the future was bright because humanity had shown the galaxy a better way, not through conquest, through example, not through fear, through respect, not through domination, through partnership. The memorial plaque at the Academy, now visited by millions from across the galaxy each year, bore an inscription that had become humanity's motto. They died believing in peace. We fought believing in justice. We won proving we could have both. Underneath, in smaller letters, was a warning that every species in the galaxy now took seriously. Congratulations. You just declared war on the most lethal species in the galaxy. We hope you learned something from the experience. We would prefer not to teach this lesson again. The galaxy had learned, and it was better for it. Humanity had not just won a war. They had changed what war meant, what peace meant, what civilization itself meant, and that was the greatest victory of all.